In today's video, I'm going to tackle two of the hardest challenges in financial planning. So buckle up and wish me well. The first question is, how much money do I need to retire? And the second question is, when should I retire? Those are the holy grail. Those are the tough questions, the one that keep all of us up at night. So let's start with the financial question. How much money do I need to retire? And you know what I'm going to say here. It depends. Depends on a lot of factors, right? But what I can tell you is no matter how much money you think you need to retire, the odds are really good that as you get close to that number, you're going to feel like you need more money. It's called moving goalposts, right? They constantly move. So somebody might say, boy, if I ever had $500,000, I would retire in a heartbeat. And they say that when they're 30 and they find themselves at 40 or 45 or 50 with that amount. And all of a sudden it doesn't seem like as much as it was when they first set that goal. So they say, you know, let's move that up to $1 million. When they get there, it's like, well, having a cushion would be nice. It gets moved up to $1.25 million, et cetera. And there's a couple things that come into play, right? I mean, if it takes a decade to hit your goal, by the time you hit it, that amount of money doesn't buy the same amount that you set a decade ago. So that's part of it. And that's perfectly all right and perfectly normal. You should be factoring inflation, right? What kind of lifestyle can I have? And that constantly changes. But another thing that comes into play is just, you know, Moore's Law, where it can seem like more is always better. And in a vacuum, if your only decision was, I want more money versus less, then of course. But like everything in life, it doesn't take place in a vacuum. There's a cost for it. And the cost is our time. So our time, our health, our vitality, we have limited amount of time where we're healthy and active and can do the things that we want to do. And what makes it even more challenging is we're making this decision whether we continue to work, whether we continue to trade time for money. We do that typically when we're healthy. And it's just normal. It's one of the behavioral mistakes that humans make. Thought process mistakes, which is recency, right? We overweight what's happened most recently. And if you're in good health and you feel good now, it's easy to think that this is going to continue. But that's not the case. You've probably heard of the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years, right? When you first retire, it's go-go, then you slow down. But I want to put some numbers behind that. What are the go-go years? When do those typically end? And yes, you might be in great shape, but I know some people that were in great shape. I have a good friend that died in his 40s, probably the healthiest person that I knew. He was a triathlete, always working out. And unfortunately, all of that working out hid the fact that he had a heart issue. And unfortunately, his heart quit working one day in his 40s. So none of us know. And so we're making this decision how long we keep working, but we're healthy and we're thinking it's going to continue. Let me give you a couple stats. Some you've heard of, maybe some you have not. If you're 60 years old, you likely have less than 1,000 weeks of healthy, active time in front of you. And frankly, that's being generous, right? That is 20 years. That's saying you're going to be healthy and active to 80, which gets to my earlier question. How long do these go-go years last? You know, what I've seen is anywhere from early 70s to maybe 80, depending on, you know, how good a shape you're in, how healthy you are, and then there's luck involved in it as well. So the go-go years could end at 70, 72. And I think many of us, if that happened to us, would regret the fact that we moved the goalposts, constantly moving the goalposts, what we're trying to achieve. It's almost like a 100-yard dash, right? The thumbnail for this video has a racetrack and it says retire here, which is before you get to the finish line. So imagine a 100-yard dash, and left to ourselves, we finish that 100-yard dash and we're like, I'm going to keep going for another 100 yards. And we finish that and we keep going for another 100 yards. And, you know, before we know it, we've run a quarter of a mile or a half a mile, and we never intended for that. My goal in this video is to take that 100-yard checkered flag, and I want to move it forward. I want to make it an 80-yard race, because I think for many of us, we could make the decision to retire sooner. Let me tell you how. One is, as a financial advisor, naturally, I want my clients to have the highest likelihood of success possible. And what that means for me when I run a Monte Carlo simulation, when I run 1,000 or 10,000 different scenarios and say, you've got a really good shot of never running out of money, right? You can never say never. But I like to see 95, 97% likelihood of success for my clients, but that's a very high likelihood. The reality is we just don't fly this plane into the ground as we're going through our life adventure. If we're fortunate and the market does well and we get strong returns, well, that airplane, to use my analogy, gets higher and higher and you never spend down your money. And that does happen, and I see that happen. It's not as unusual as people think it is. But sometimes people do get on this glide path where they're heading down and, they've gotten unlucky. They retire in 2007. They retire at the end of the dot-com bubble. And they have this, what's called sequence of return risk. And instead of the plane going up, the plane's going down, and your account balance is going down more quickly than you had anticipated, right? But we make changes along the way. Maybe we cut back on our expenses. Maybe we get a part-time job. Should you not retire because, you have a 10%, a 15% chance of being on that plane going down? That's a decision you have to make. This video is not personal advice for you. I don't know, but I want to put these things on your radar screen. I can tell you many, many people would be comfortable saying, if I find myself on that path, maybe, we buy a used car every 5 years instead of a new car every 5 years. Maybe we cut back on our expenses. Maybe, we do one less trip, one less vacation a year. We do things to respond to that. So there's lots of ways that you can look at that. Now, the other question, when to retire. Remember, I said I'm going to tackle two big challenges. The question on when to retire, here's my big caution there, is it's easy to measure many of the things that don't require health and vitality, right? Our jobs, our bank account, our investment returns. But I want you to also take some quiet time. And I want you to think about the important things. Think about what you could be doing with your time and what you could be doing if you didn't have this stress of your current job. How would that change things? Would you have more time with people that you love? Many people at my age are taking care of aging adult parents. And could you spend more time with them? Could you spend more time with your adult children? Could you spend more time with your grandkids? Could you spend more time, if you're married, with your spouse and building new memories with them? So these are all things that are hard to measure. And yes, you should have a buffer account. What if things go poorly? So if the goal is $1 million, there's nothing wrong with having, $1.25 million if it's not stealing time away from you. There's nothing wrong with having a buffer. But at some point you have to say the buffer is big enough. You can buffer yourself into eternity, right? So obviously the way to maximize your bank account is just keep working. You never have to take any money out of your retirement savings, and you keep putting money in, but none of us want that. So I just caution you that the things that you can't measure, I think many of us are going to look back and say, those were the things that were more important. I wish I had spent more time doing those things. And so that's my caution, is unspent money. And I well over half of my clients die with a substantial amount of money unspent. And for some of that, there's inheritance goals, there's charity goals, but part of that is unused energy, right? You've invested energy into these goals, into your finances, into making money, but you were never able to use what money can provide: opportunities, adventures, vacations, opportunities to bond. So when's the right time to retire? I think it's sooner rather than later. And I also think you should invest a little bit of time watching this video here, 8 things to stop doing as you approach your 50s and 60s. I'll see you in there. Thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.